欢迎大家参加我们今天的讲座。我是投必得学术的创办人张宁，十分荣幸今天能够邀请到 JACC Cardiovascular Intervention 期刊主编和我们一起举办这次讲座。我们这次讲座一共分5次，今天是第4次，是 Peer Review Week， 也就是同行评议周的一部分。同行评议周是每年1次的全球活动，旨在宣传同行评议在保持科学质量方面发挥的重要作用。今年的主题是信任同行评议。首先由JACC 期刊主编David Moliterno为我们做报告，然后投必得培训部的负责人 Gary Stack 与讲者进行交流，最后大家可以提问题。Okay, I will repeat in English. Welcome to the 4th webinar in our series of peer review week webinars organized by TopEdit Author Services. My name is Ning Zhang, the founder and the CEO of TopEdit. Our webinar series comprises 5 events, all part of our contribution to global peer review week events. The theme of this year is Trust in Peer Review. Our guest speaker is Dr. David Moliterno. He will give us a presentation in a moment, and then we will have time for our discussion, Q&A at the end. Feel free to ask any questions throughout this webinar by typing them into the chat box. 下面我要介绍一下今天的嘉宾 Dr. Moliterno， 他是 JACC Cardiovascular Interventions 的期刊主编，这个期刊的影响因子是 9.5， 他是肯塔基大学内科学的主席，也是 JACC Gill 教授，他还是肯塔基州列克星顿市吉尔心脏与心血管研究所介入心脏病学系的研究员。在过去的20年中，他参与了许多心血管医学的研究，主要研究领域是急性冠脉综合症。在担任总编辑之前，Moliterno 博士曾担任该杂志的副编辑。Moliterno 博士是美国心脏学会的活跃成员，曾是美国州长理事会的成员、战略教育委员会和领导委员会的成员。Okay, I will repeat English. Dr. Moliterno is the editor-in-chief of JACC Cardiovascular Interventions. He is the JACC Gill Chair and Professor of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Kentucky. He is also a member of the Interventional Cardiology faculty at the Gill Heart and Vascular Institute in Lexington, Kentucky. He has been involved with numerous investigational studies in cardiovascular medicine over the last 2 decades, with his primary research interest being in acute coronary syndromes. Prior to assuming position as editor-in-chief, Dr. Moliterno served as the associate editor of the journal, an active member of the ACC. Dr. Moliterno has been a member of the Board of Governors, Strategic Education Committee, and the Interventional Section Leadership Council. 今天他的演讲题目是 Insights and Tips for Publishing in the JACC Family. Okay, let's welcome Dr. Moliterno. Yes, you can start, David.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to give this presentation. I hope it's helpful to you. I know you've had some other presentations, and hopefully this one will add to your knowledge. As mentioned, we will have some time at the end, so please feel free to submit some questions and I'll do my best to answer them with the time we have. Of course, being a journal editor, I do have some conflicts of interest, though I don't think any are going to impact the presentation importantly. As was mentioned, here I'm introducing the JACC family, published by Elsevier. So the Journal of the American College of Cardiology is a long-standing and top journal in cardiovascular medicine. Dr. Fuster is the editor-in-chief, and we've got the pictures here of the family, but we also added in the hyperlinks so you can see where to submit papers to us should you have work to share and have us review. As mentioned, I'm the editor-in-chief for JACC Cardiovascular Interventions, but then we also have other journals dedicated to cardiovascular imaging, to heart failure specifically, basic and translational science, electrophysiology at the far end there, and most recently, JACC case reports and JACC cardio-oncology. So you can see with this family, we really cover the entire spectrum of cardiovascular medicine science, from basic research all the way to clinical practice, and then the type of manuscripts from case reports all the way to review articles and state-of-the-art papers. So I hope you'll consider submitting your work to us. Just to give you an overview about publishing and what happens in the JACC family, you'll see that we have several of our journals among the top 100 in the cardiovascular space in the entire world. In fact, JACC Cardiovascular Interventions, JACC Cardiovascular Imaging, and JACC Heart Failure are often in the top 10 to 12 of more than 100 cardiovascular journals around the world. And here you can see the number of annual submissions, the impact factor associated with each of the journals where it's available, and then the online usage, which is really phenomenally high and quite impressive. We've tried to grow further, and you've probably seen this, especially in the digital and electronic era, particularly with the current pandemic, and just like today's presentation, rather than being in person, trying to do things as best possible via the internet. And so several of the journals have come up with very attractive presentations for virtual journal club or other virtual options. And probably Googling, you can find some of these, and they're really fantastic, like the one with Dr. Eugene Brunwald and Doug Mann and others with the virtual journal clubs. And these have been very well received, and hundreds of viewers have been watching them so far. We're also popular on social media, and we continue to try to improve there with well over 100,000 followers, for example, on Facebook. And you can also search your platform for social media, be it Facebook, Twitter, or others, and find JACC's presence there and invite you to follow us on those media. The last kind of introductory thing I'd like to say about the JACC family, and that's when we're starting JACC Asia soon. And this will be specifically focused on cardiovascular healthcare, its science and care delivery for Asia. We already receive a substantial number of papers from Asia, but this journal was meant to specifically focus on patient care, science, and care delivery for Asia. And so there will be a specific focus on China, Japan, and South Korea. And we hope to engage with the cardiovascular clinicians via this journal and really make it regional with regard to its peer review and topics. So with regard to JACC Asia, as I was alluding to, it will be original articles about the Asian population. There will be guidelines that are more focused towards the Asian population, because we know there are some specific genetic and phenotypic differences between individuals from the Asia region versus other regions of the world. And we'll look to original content driving that. And just as it is important to have this journal, so too an editor from Asia. And so you'll see that there's a search right now looking for an editor-in-chief who will be responsible for this journal in coordination with others around the world. Okay, now on to my talk. I'm going to break it up into these 4 categories, and you may have heard from other editors about these various topics with regard to publishing. So mine may be additive to what you've heard before, but I think you'll be able to use this information and apply it to any article that you're constructing and planning to submit. So we've already gone over some of the introductory comments to JACC, but I'll go over some specifically now for JACC Cardiovascular Interventions, and then more broadly talking about constructing the best research, writing the best paper, and then understanding the submission process. So moving on to JACC specifically, it really is an international journal, and while the name implies that it's for America, no, it's really a global journal. And to first evidence that, while we have a sizable number of associate and deputy editors, what you'll see here is that they come from 11 different countries around the world. And we have a number of consultants and reviewers from around the world. And just scanning the list of associate editors, you'll see they're from Spain, France, the United States, South Korea, Germany, Canada, the United Arab Emirates, and so on and so forth. And we have even more reviewers from around the world, and that's super important. We have named editorial consultants from Asia for sure. Here's just some pictures. I know I always like to show the pictures of individuals who are helping to make JACC Cardiovascular Interventions successful, some of our associate editors from around the globe. This is important, right? It's a sign of how we're doing with regard to the number of manuscripts. And as you can see, submitted year over year is roughly 10 manuscripts per workday, or around 2,500 papers throughout the year. And I'm very pleased that that number keeps growing. More specifically though, and evidencing that this is a global journal, you'll notice that papers are coming from around the world. And in fact, about 70%, 70%, are coming from outside the United States. And so here I've excluded the United States and just showing you the different countries that are providing papers to our journal. And in particular, if you look at the color in red, this is China, and you see how it's substantially grown the number of manuscripts from around 70 all the way up to roughly 230 just in the last several years. So going up by 3 or 4-fold. And you see we've always had a good submission rate from Japan, and we look forward to that continuing to our journal. The impact factor has done very well. It's the leading impact factor among cardiovascular interventional journals globally, and we're very, very proud of those numbers. Let me move on now to more general topics about constructing the best research. And one of the things I try to tell people is, in order to write the best papers, you really need to be reading the best papers. And so I encourage you to find the best journals in your area of interest and read them, and then try to emulate some of their best practices, whether it's in writing succinctly or creating the best tables or the best figures, just really delivering the content as best possible. And one of the ways to do that is by reading others' works, particularly those that are truly outstanding, and then emulating them the best that you can. It's rather quite simple in my view. It takes a lot of work, but I think there's an easy 3-step approach to clinical science, and one is to ask the right question. Now, the obvious argument can be, well, what is the right question? And well, first of all, it needs to be of interest to you, because if it's interesting and passionate to you, you'll have more energy to commit to it. Though it is important that it's interesting to other people, because if it's not interesting to them, it may not be what's right for the literature, and in particular, the journal to which you're submitting your work. So obviously it's key to be able to be thoughtful, to be insightful, and figure out what is the right question that's going to help either refine the current area of interest or to advance it ultimately to improve patient care or the study in that particular discipline. It's importantly, though, once you identify that right question, to answer it correctly. And, you know, there's a number of different ways to do that, and I'll go through some of them. But then ultimately, and what we're talking about today is once you've got that answer, is how do you effectively communicate it to the reader or to the listener? And I think one of the beginnings that sometimes is overlooked is going and look at the instruction to the authors. Each journal has instruction to the authors, and they can carefully explain to you how to appropriately submit your work. And one of them is just figuring out, you know, what types of papers do each journal take. Some journals rather, emphasize case reports more, others emphasize review articles more. I think the JACC family in particular is focused on original research. We certainly have review articles, we certainly have other types of submissions, but I think what our family is known for is publishing high quality original research manuscripts. Here are some instructions though for some unique areas, and those are state-of-the-art papers and images and intervention, and you can click on those links online and it'll take you directly to papers I've written about in the past, trying to tell you what are great examples and how to do these papers as best possible in the view of the editor-in-chief. Well, finding that right paper is starting with something I believe is topical and meaningful, right? You don't want something that's just purely historic because it won't be as much of an interest, yet you don't want something that's so futuristic there's not good current data or information to support it, meaning it's more speculative. So I would try to figure out what's most topical and most meaningful in your particular area of research and interest. Obviously, if you can use the absolute best trial design possible, you're going to have the strongest science and study possible. And then I'm going to give you a few examples on what I call as protocolizing the study. Even if it's not prospective, but if you can drive your investigation via a protocol that's predefined as opposed to wandering, you'll do better in the end. And I'll say that you should probably try to start the draft version of your paper immediately. Now that may sound kind of silly to start the paper before the science, but no, if you have got a protocol about what you want to do, you'll be able to write that down, and that'll help to guide your thoughts and guide others who are on your research team. I talked for a moment about study design, and this is really important, and there's a range of evidence that's available that you can use, and how high is that quality of evidence and where does it come from? Obviously, if you just have a single case report, that's going to be the weakest evidence, right? Because it's just one case. But if you can build on that with consecutive cases, you're going to have a little bit stronger evidence for what you may be observing. And then you can go through different case controls or cohorts. Prospective is going to be stronger than retrospective, but then obviously the very best is going to be randomized clinical trials that are prospective, of course, and single center, but then multi-center, and then national, and then obviously multinational are going to be the absolute strongest. So I mentioned earlier about JACC Asia, and so we would look forward to having some contemporary controlled studies and then some randomized studies coming out of Asia in particular, because these would be particularly strong and most attractive to your readers. There are papers out there. We just had one published in JACC itself, talking about what's needed for prospective studies in ischemic heart disease. And here's one that talks about large trials in cardiovascular disease. It was published a number of years ago in the European Heart Journal. And while this is an opinion paper, like my talk today, I think it gives good guidance for investigators. In that one, though, they brought out some of the concepts that I'm delivering to you now about the design, the conduct of the study, so that you can integrate these elements as you're going into your study protocol and design so that you will produce the best work possible, and then make it easiest to translate that into a manuscript and hopefully a scientific presentation at a scientific meeting on the subject. And you can read through this about what is going to make the study ideal with regard to its quality and content. Okay, I mentioned earlier this concept of protocolizing your study, and this starts at the very beginning. You need to be able to clearly articulate what you want to do. Why are you doing it? Hopefully it's not just to publish a paper, but rather to advance the field, either in its understanding. So you may be refining, for example, how things apply locally to your patient population or more regionally. And so if you can clearly articulate or write out what are the specific aims, what are you hoping to accomplish, you'll be further ahead. If you can clearly understand what the hypothesis is, what are you trying to either prove or disprove, that'll help you in the beginning, as opposed to just amassing a lot of data and then retrospectively trying to understand what's important in those data. If you can ahead of time create your hypothesis and concept, you'll be far better off. Why? Is because then you're going to know exactly what you're looking for, how many patients you might need or how many subjects in your research, by using prospective statistical methods to understand what is the power, what sample size, and what calculations need to come forth. You should specify how you're going to define the study population, either in the subjects or in the patients, and then what variables specifically you're going to study. And now you can understand how you're already creating the data tables that may be in your manuscript, because if you know them up front, you should be able to put them together, even if they're not populated with data, but you can put together, you know, which cohorts you're looking at, what demographics, what enrollment criteria, what outcome data you're going to want to have in those tables. And I would encourage you to involve a statistician or biostatistician already at this stage, because they may help you refine your thinking. Now I'm going to shift more practically to writing the best papers. And so once you're getting some data and you're thinking about actually putting this together for an abstract or a presentation at a major meeting, you should also be thinking about actually writing the manuscript that you plan to submit for publication to a journal. One of the recommendations I give, particularly to junior authors, and that's the write as you go approach. Don't wait until your study is all finished and all the data are collected, all the analyses are finished to begin writing. No, I say begin writing as soon as you have your concepts and ideas. Why is that? Well, writing a paper is not something you should do once you finish the experiment, because I don't think you will be as good of an investigator if you wait until the end to start writing it. Chances are, if it's a human clinical trial, you're going to need to submit your plan for research to an ethics committee at your university or your hospital, or to an institutional review board, an IRB. You may also need to be putting it on your government's clinical trials website. I know in the United States and others around the world use the US clinicaltrials.gov website to put out there prospectively information about the research that's being conducted, so that, again, it can be seen that you have these thoughts and plans in advance rather after you have collected a lot of data. Chances are, if you needed to put together a consent form or send something to your ethics committee, you had to write to them about what you plan to do. And that was the rationale. Why are you doing research, and what does the beginning of your protocol look like? Well, that's the introduction of your manuscript. Hopefully the reason you're doing the study, the background about that field of interest is already available to you, and therefore you can write out the introduction, which will hopefully end with the hypothesis or what is the aims of your study. And you should be able to do this really before you even start with your first subject or patient. And then you probably sketched out in your consent form or plans for the study what you plan to analyze, how you plan to analyze it, what statistics you may be using. And this really is the methods section of your paper. You're describing the population you're studying, how you're going to study them, what data you're collecting, what statistics you're going to be using. And that's the methods section of your paper. The bigger one is the results, and you're not going to have those until your study's completed, but nonetheless, you can start writing the beginning of your results section immediately. You can start putting in data tables, for example. Now, you may not have them in the final version of the paper because they may not be important, because not all the data may ultimately be something you want to analyze. So for example, some studies will collect information with regard to how many patients they screened, not necessarily enrolled in the study, but just how many they screened, so that they can understand how applicable these data may be in the local environment. But you may not need that information in your final manuscript, but still you can put together data tables, and that's going to be your results section of the manuscript. Yeah, ultimately you're going to have an abstract for a meeting, hopefully, or for a scientific presentation, and there you're going to need to think about what it actually is getting presented, what discussion you might have, and then finally what conclusion you may have based upon those data. And if you put all that information together, you've really got the manuscript virtually completed for presentation. Now I'd like to go just very quickly through each of those topics, and some of this may be well known to you. But again, if you're a young author, here are some tips. With regard to the introduction, some people try to think this is a place to convince the reader that what's being done is important. You know, chances are you don't need to do that. If you've picked the right question, you won't need to do that. So you really can be concise in your introduction. It really just takes a couple of paragraphs. If it's more than a single page long, chances are it's too much information. So you really want to be as concise as possible. And oftentimes this can get broken down into three concepts. One is to introduce the topic, i.e. what is known, what is important to either refine about what is known or what is not known about this topic that you're going to try to answer. And then that's the finality, is how does this study help address what needs to be refined or what is not known. And in fact, a number of the JACC journals have put together bullet points now at the beginning of the manuscript to say what is known, you know, what does this current paper add, and then where are we going in the future? And so that's often the synopsis of a paper. Where were we, where are we, and where are we going? So again, one page is at most what's needed, and the shorter, I think, the better. With regard to the methods section, I would say pay special attention to definitions. Define clearly who is a study population. That may be the inclusion criteria. You may need to say who is not the study population, meaning who's excluded. So that's really important, you know, the who, the when, the where. You also want to clearly define the outcomes. So whether it's all-cause mortality, whether it's cardiovascular mortality, for example, you would think that death is a simple thing to define, but no, you may not know why people died, and you need to say that then, that you're looking at all-cause mortality. And where did you get those data? Was it from an administrative database, or did you confirm the patient's death by autopsy records, whether it was cardiac or non-cardiac, for example? You need to define the analysis, and this is oftentimes coming from a statistician. They're helping you to spell out clearly and succinctly the statistics being done. What you want is somebody to be able to reproduce your study based upon your method section. The results are important. They're obviously the most important part of the paper, because that's what people want to know, is what are the results. I think it's helpful to use subheadings, and you should spend an important amount of time on the tables and figures. I specifically go and look at tables and figures because that's where I can quickly take in the data and then personally digest it. Okay, what you don't want to put in the results or commentaries. You want to focus on the results only and put the comments or the digestion of the results in the discussion section. With regard to the tables and figures, I said that those were really important, and they are. I also said early on that you may want to look at the best journals out there, and I've listed a few, including JACC, and you may want to look at their tables and figures and see how they put them together, because this will help you, I think, to see what is the best of the best. Here are some rookie mistakes that I would avoid, and that's, I wouldn't use complex figures that are 3D. Sometimes online they work, not so well in print. Here are a couple other tips with regard to abbreviations and footnotes. Here's just an example of something I've been fond of and we've tried to build further, and that is making a great central illustration where you can really look at a figure and understand what's happening in a study. Now, this was from a state-of-the-art paper, and it was quite helpful to us in its final format. What we do is we have authors send us a sketch or a drawing or a diagram, and then we can make it into a very attractive central illustration. With regard to the discussion, it needs to be long, but not too long. You want there to be an opening paragraph with several key assessments about what you found. The middle portion is obviously going to be the gut, so to speak, of the discussion. And then at the end, you need to have at least a few sentences, if not a dedicated paragraph, to what are the limitations of your study. Now, beyond that, then, are going to be the implications to practice or to the field, and then some conclusions about your paper. So in the discussion, please, again, look at the instruction to the authors. Be sure that you're submitting in the correct format. It's always recommended to use up-to-date references, not necessarily just things that you yourself have written, but really what's the most up-to-date references for the topic. Be prepared to revise your paper a lot. Get it out to your co-authors. Ask them to read it and to give their input, because the more people that read it, the better it is, generally speaking. And obviously you need to be ready for criticism. So in summary, ask the right question, craft a clear, well-planned analysis, write as you go, make sure your tables and figures are the best possible because they're key. Yeah, be ready to revise the paper over and over again, and just keep doing that. You have to be ready to embrace criticism from others, in particular the reviewers at journals, because they're often meant to be critical to help you to improve your paper, and then be steadfast, be tenacious. And what I tell junior investigators is if your study was really worth doing, it's really worth publishing, and you may need to submit it to more than one journal. There are places to find help, by the way, online. Here's just one. I haven't checked this lately, I must confess, but when I put this talk together before, I did find this link at Elsevier and found some resources for authors on how to be the best writer possible. So the paper's finished. Now what? You've got it sent to a journal. You've got it in the correct format, and you've got it in the correct category, because some journals will ask you specifically what category, whether it's original research or a review article, whether it's an image or whether it's a case report. You need to write a cover letter, and you might say, how should I know? The question is, why should you write a cover letter? Some journals really like them and like looking at them. There are some elements that are important that are included in a cover letter, and you should do that. There are these essential elements that are required for many, required by many journals, and that's to say that you're not sending it to another journal at the same time, that it's not copyrighted material, but it's original, that all the authors have approved the submission of the paper, and that you've disclosed any important conflicts of interest. These are all important things to do. Remember, first impressions count, so make sure you've got a nice cover letter that you've addressed either the editor-in-chief or the paper correctly. It's embarrassing if you send a cover letter and it's got the wrong name of the editor or the wrong journal in the header. That tells us you probably submitted it somewhere else and didn't update it. If you're submitting it to an American journal, you want to be sure you use American English. If you're submitting it to a British journal, you obviously make sure you're using British English. Okay, here's just an example of one I sent to Dr. Bailey at another journal a couple of years ago, and you notice it was on nice letterhead and says the appropriate things. Remember, a cover letter is your only chance to just say what you want to say. You want to say why your study is important, why this journal is important for the publication, and it gives you a chance to just say that frankly. If you have requests for either specific reviewers to invite or to avoid, you can put it there, and there are other things that you can add to the cover letter as appropriate. Okay. Most of this I've already covered, and you can read through this, but it just helps to give you information for the cover letter to convince the editor why they should consider your paper in particular. Again, they're required. First impression counts. You can speak candidly. It's an opportunity to put in request, and it is a place for you to emphasize why this journal should strongly consider your paper. So what happens after all that? You've done the study, you've constructed the paper, you've done a cover letter, and you've submitted it. Well, it's either going to get accepted or rejected or somewhere in between. And this is just my general impression that if you get a provisional acceptance, which is usually a minor or a major revision, there's a very strong chance your paper is going to be accepted at that journal. If you get something that's more in between that says they are asking for a revision and then they'll reconsider it, it usually means it needs a fair amount of work done to it, and it's got a moderately high chance of acceptance. But if the paper is rejected, but an offer to resubmit it, if it's reconstructed dramatically, it's got a low chance, but better than average. I think most or many top tier journals, in particular in the JACC family, have an acceptance rate of maybe 10%, 15%, which means that bottom category reject is going to go to, maybe 85 or 90% of papers. That's unfortunate, but that's the way things happen. So just as we receive thousands of manuscripts, we can't publish them all. We have only a certain bandwidth, so to speak, for publishing. And so it's going to end up being around 10%. But if you do get a chance to resubmit your paper, if you're invited to do that, we're going to put a lot of effort into it. So this is what I say on resubmission. Try to be prompt. Don't resubmit, 6 or 12 months later unless you're being asked to do something dramatically different, because a delay suggests there may be a problem, or that you send it to another journal hoping they wouldn't ask you to refine it so much. And then only when it's not accepted at that journal, it comes back to the original place. I would make your rebuttal compelling. It should be carefully thought out. It should be professional. It should be polite, and it should be to the point. If you're asked to provide additional data, do that and be precise about it. And of course, be courteous. I personally like a separate document so that I can look at that about how the paper has been improved. Some of us will call that a rebuttal document or a rebuttal letter. You should restate the issue the reviewer had and then your answer to it. If you agree, that's fine. You can respond to it. If you disagree, you shouldn't ignore it, but you should rather carefully say why you disagree with the reviewer, or further explain why you believe what you've done is correct. So that was pretty quick. I did want to spend about 35 or 40 minutes though going over some of the things about the journal in particular and how we should construct the best research, write the best paper, and then the results of the submission process. Yeah, now what I'd like to do is, as best possible, see if we can't get some questions sent in to me, and I'll be happy to try to answer those questions for you. So whether it's via the chat section or otherwise. So
Perfect.
is it okay, Gareth, to just have my face here and to read some of these questions and try to answer them for the viewers?
Absolutely, absolutely. We loved it. Thank you so much. Like our, I mean, it's our platform is multi-platform, so we have lots of audience in China, but also colleagues from India, Argentina, Brazil, Spain, and Kazakhstan joining us in this presentation today. So I'll pass on a few questions, and hopefully we can pick your brains a little bit more this afternoon, this morning, this evening before you. So the first, yeah. So people love the idea of write as you go. So so one of the questions we have to get started is could you please explain a little bit more about that concept for?
Yeah. So yeah, I think once you've written a few papers, you understand it better. But sometimes when I have an individual write a paper for the first time, actually give them electronically one of the papers I've already written. And I'm not saying to plagiarize or copy it, no, but they can literally just put in a new title, put in a new set of authors, but then they can see what they need to do next. They can start with the introduction and see, oh, I wrote 2 paragraphs of an introduction. What did I have in that introduction? But like back to the concept of just reading a lot. So if you're reading a good journal, and chances are if you're submitting a manuscript, you have other references or citations and you read those papers. And so those papers also had an introduction. So you can kind of see how much information did they put in. So the concept is if you have to, again, do a submission to a regulatory body or to anyone about your work, you had to explain it to them. And so you've put together an introduction. And so I think just getting things on paper and forcing yourself to do it. If you say, okay, today I'm going to write 1 paragraph, and that 1 paragraph is going to be my introduction. And then tomorrow I'm going to write the 2nd paragraph. And I think if you can keep forcing yourself to do that, literally within a week, you can have most of the paper done as opposed to trying to do it all in one setting, because then you just won't do it. It'll take a long time to pull together.
I'm going to follow that advice because I always procrastinate.
Yep.
So some questions from China. Do you have suggestions for Chinese researchers who want to publish papers in your journal? How can they do that?
Yeah. So like I said, we are getting a large increase in the number of papers from China. So obviously one of the great things about China is it's such a large country, and there are hospitals and universities that have large patient populations and high throughput of patients. And so I'm amazed that the number of patients that they can put into either studies or into registries is just, it's overwhelming sometimes that we might get a paper with, say, 50 subjects from a smaller country, and then we'll get one from China with 2,000 patients, and it really takes me aback. So yeah, if I were in China right now, and I try to go to China a couple times a year, but if I were there right now advising them, that would be to right now begin collecting prospective data as best possible, because that data will just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, and then it can be harvested for really big data sets that are just going to overwhelm the world with the power of that data. But getting involved is, again, getting plugged into Chinese societies, whether it's in the local area, the province, the region, and getting involved and just getting other investigators or other hospitals saying, how can we address this question, be it in congenital heart disease or in new devices. There's a lot of new devices in China, and the world is wanting to see what's happening. How are they being used? And so I think it's a really exciting time for the Chinese investigators.
Now, David, people are confused about clinical trial registrations, in particular, this idea of which we know about from our editing work, but lots of colleagues don't, this idea of prospective clinical trial registration. And you mentioned the US databases, but so it's okay to register in United Nations accredited databases.
It is. So it just can't be a website at random, but it should either be, again, it may be a province, it may be a country, it may be like the European Union. It should be, though, a recognized entity, but it does not have to be clinicaltrials.gov. That just happens to be an easy one that's easily accessible, well-known, used around the world. But no, it doesn't have to be that one, but it should be one where that we can go in and see, okay, this was registered in the past. The authors didn't do all this and then in a post hoc or after the fact go in and register this. So it really should be there, just like with IRB or ethics, that should be stated in the paper if it's got human subjects, that an ethics committee reviewed it and approved it, but it doesn't have to be something in the US or Europe. It just needs to be some recognized entity.
So the United Nations has a good resource for authors to look at, to find a local or relatively local database, and prospective registration is critically important, right?
Yep, touche, you've got it.
Okay, awesome. Shall I hand over to Rui? Do you have some questions from the Chinese audience from your side?
Yeah, and I have some from the chat that I can bring out. If Rui, you're on mute if you do want to talk. Hi. So it's one of the questions that came up. I'll do one more, Rui, and then you can take the microphone off mute and we'll hear you. It says, how do the JACC Journals select reviewers? Ooh, that's a great, and can we suggest reviewers? Will you use them? So authors can always select reviewers. It's very common. You put that in your cover letter. All cover letters are read. They're usually read by me, but they're often read by the administrative personnel who's bringing in the manuscript to make sure it's got all the appropriate elements of that you said there's no conflict of interest, that all the authors have read the paper. But in there, if you say, we want these reviewers or we don't want these reviewers, we will notice that. But how do we select them? So when I get a paper, I read it. The first thing I do is decide if it's going to be one of our, say, top half. If the paper is in the bottom quartile, in my view, I may not send it out for review just because that's going to then use even more reviewers. Again, we may have 1,000 reviewers that we need per year for various papers, and so we don't want to fatigue them. So some papers won't get reviewed, but those that are going to be reviewed, which is the majority, by the way, I will send them to an associate editor who I believe knows that topic particularly well. So we have some associate editors for structural, some for coronary intervention, some for peripheral. And then that associate editor will pick reviewers. Whom do they pick? They pick people who they know are available to do a review in a timely fashion and are experts or well knowledgeable about the topic.
Rui, you're muted. Let's unmute.
Okay.
Yourself.
Oh, so sorry. That's why. Hi. Okay. So here, I have a quick question. So when do you start the new journal, JACC Asia, in your plan? I think
yes.
Will be very
oh yeah. So thanks, Rui. I did not answer that, or I did not say that. It's planned for next year. So sometime in the next calendar year, we hope the journal will start. As mentioned, currently in the process looking for an editor-in-chief, and that usually takes a couple months to occur. It's currently open, so people interested could find that and apply for it. But then once you get your editor-in-chief, then they have to find associate editors and start building the platform for it. But I would say within the next 1 year, it will be launched.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I think 1 month ago, we just post an article from JACC website is hiring a associate editor now. Yeah.
So we have had JACC in the past and presently in Mandarin, I believe, with Dr. Han Lin. In China, and but it's trying to expand that even further in Asia. So we look forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So
a question that I'll just read, Rui, while you find another is: do you assess the statistics in papers with distinct reviewers? Yeah, good question. So our journal has a statistical reviewer who's employed by the journal. Sometimes we need to use more than one. And so yes, we have a dedicated statistical reviewer. We do not send papers to that reviewer until we're getting closer to an acceptance, just so that they don't review the statistics on every paper. But if we are leaning towards accepting a paper, we'll often get the statistician involved to make sure that there aren't any issues. Just like with graphic artists. So we have graphic artists whom we use for the journal, and we don't send the images to that artist until the paper is close to acceptance, and then we'll get a graphic artist to help with the figures.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask one from one of our colleagues in India that came to one of our other platforms, and this is about authorship. Like, do you ask authors to complete like a conflict, so not a conflict, but a contribution, like, you know, who did what when
so most journals will expect the corresponding author to attest that all authors have had a meaningful contribution to the work. And sometimes it's just a simple question like that. Other journals will make you pick what you did, whether it's in design, analysis, writing, refining the writing. And so, yeah, that is inherent in the process, is making sure that all authors had a meaningful contribution. And at the very least, all authors have read and agree with the contents. So, yes.
Okay. Great. Now, most of our followers in China are young researchers, like early career researchers, and lots of people are asking us about journal clubs. Like, how can they join? How can they engage with your journal?
Yes. So that's the beauty of the internet, and it's free. And at the very beginning of my talk, I put a hyperlink in there for the journals. And so, I don't remember what the search platforms are in India or China. I know that there's limited, and so Google may not be everywhere, but there are search engines where you can find the journals, and you can just usually click on them. Usually their banner page or their face page will have a place where you can go to click on. And the other thing is, obviously you can follow these journals on, again, Twitter or Facebook, and they will be announcing when they have journal clubs that you can then just join those links. Unfortunately, they may not always be in the best time for your part of the world, but I think they're also recorded, just like this is being recorded for if somebody wants to look at it in the future.
Right. I should say that everybody who registered for this event will get a recording of this, and we'll send like a complete list of all of the questions as well. Our young researchers also often find editors and editorial board members a little intimidating to contact directly. So it's useful for them in particular to have this opportunity to see you give a presentation. So, I mean, one of the most common questions we get is how long to wait before talking to an editor about a paper that's been submitted. What's the turnaround time in your journals?
Yeah, so that's a terrific question. I think what I semi-discourage is people who send me their paper by email and say, hey, do you think this is worthy to submit to your journal? No, just submit it. And usually within 1 week, somebody's going to have looked at it. And if we don't think it's going to make the, say the upper half of papers, we'll let you know right away. In contrast, if we don't, return it within that first week, chances are then it's gone out for reviews, which are going to take, a couple of weeks for reviewers to read it, to spend time with it. So to answer your question specifically, Gareth, I think our average turnaround is around 20 days. Wow. It varies, and with the pandemic, it can be higher or lower. But that's a little bit of a contrived statistic because it's bimodal, right? If your paper is not sent out for reviews, you may get unfortunately a reject within 1 week. Whereas if your paper does go out for reviews and ultimately gets reviewed, then we'll make a decision. But that's going to take, say, 4 or 5 weeks. So on average, right around 3 weeks, you're going to get the first response from us. that's what's happened with your paper, whether it's, so time to initial decision is usually under 3 weeks.
That's incredibly fast.
Yeah.
That's really
It is on average again, but sometimes it'll be a bit longer, and that's not the end of the world. You can just, on our website, there's an email address where you can just send in a query, can I get an update on my paper, and we'll let you know. I think that it's variable, especially with the pandemic. Sometimes we always try to get at least 2 reviewers for every manuscript, but it's not uncommon. We need to go to 6 or 7 just to get 2 to accept in a timely fashion. And we have a computer program that goes through an algorithm. When does it ask the first 2? And then how long does it wait before asking the 3rd one? And then how long before it sends a reminder to the first 2? And so it goes through this iterative process with asking reviewers to accept reviewing a paper. But, sometimes we may go as many as asking 10 people to find, 2 reviewers that are available in a timely fashion. And we just have to, because, it's being done for free. We have to accept, the reviewer's schedule and work with them as best possible.
I think Ning has a question. Yes.
Question. I raise my hand.
Yeah.
Do you read every manuscript?
Yeah, so I look at every paper, and so yes, and so every weekday I'm looking at about 10 papers.
Wow.
Yeah, so but the confession is do I read every single line of every table, and do I study every figure? And the answer is no. Usually, so I'll absolutely look at every single paper though to try to decide its relative placement, and as long as it gets in the top half, let me say, it's going to get more of my time, and it's going to get an associate editor to look at it, and at least a couple of reviewers to look at it. But if, for example, I quickly decide that it's not for our journal, we don't cover that area, and one of the chat questions is what is the scope and content of JACC Cardiovascular Interventions? Well, it's just that, it's vascular interventions. But for example, we don't publish quite as much on pediatrics. We do some, but not quite as much. We don't do TVAR, which is endovascular reconstruction of the aorta. That's largely being done by vascular surgeons. And so we don't publish those papers too often. We send them back and say, this would probably be in a vascular surgery journal. Some interventional radiology we won't cover. But but every paper that I think is going to have a good shot, I'll spend even more time with it. But I spend a few hours every day just reading papers.
Wow. Yeah. So that's my next question. So you are a professor, you do community service, how you balance that? So, did that keep you very busy?
Yeah, so very busy, but everyone's very busy in life. That's just the way life goes. And so you become very, when you do this thousands of times, you become quite skilled at it, and you can read quickly. I have terrific support. The JACC editorial office in Washington, D.C. is very helpful, and they process the papers promptly and quickly, and they provide me a lot of support. Again, we've got a great team of associate editors. We've got roughly 1,000 reviewers around the world who are helping us with papers. Then in addition to all this, what I didn't mention is every week we have a conference just like this where we're reviewing the papers that have gone through the review process. Now, those that don't go out for review, we don't spend time with, but every paper otherwise that gets reviews, we spend time as a group of associate editors each week talking about them. Especially papers that we think have a good chance of publication. Our job is to figure out how can we now make that paper the best possible? How can we refine the figures? How can we deliver it to the reader so it's really attractive? And that's, that's part of our passion. And so that helps too, right? When you're doing things that you're passionate about, you can really put a lot of energy into this.
Yeah. I agree. Thank you very much. So also I have another question. So it's oh, sorry, stopped. we can.
Yeah, here I have a question, because today we got a lot of information from the presentation. We even know the submitted paper numbers. These numbers are not, we cannot say this in other platforms. So here is a question still about the JACC Asia. Do you think JACC Asia with the region name would discourage authors in the other regions to submit papers? How do you position this journal as a Chinese
Wow.
researcher?
No, that's an important question, and I like that. And I don't know the answer perfectly, and I'll tell you why I don't. One, because we're not absolutely certain. One thing we're certain of, though, is that obviously Asia is incredibly large and growing very fast, and deserves its own journal, in our opinion. But if you think back to the beginning of my talk when we started JACC and JACC Cardiovascular Interventions, I think any of us would have guessed that 70% of the papers were coming from outside the United States, right? But we are interested to publish the best papers possible, no matter where they come from around the world. If we think it's the best paper, and so I don't expect all of a sudden no more papers will come from Asia to JACC Cardiovascular Interventions. But on the other hand, there are many papers that are important, but we just can't publish them. Like I said, we're only publishing 10 to 15% of papers, and there are many really good papers that we just can't publish, but maybe they could be in JACC Asia, where they're going to specifically influence cardiovascular care in Asia. And so we would love to have them stay in the JACC family, right? But possible that someday there will be papers from Europe or Africa or somewhere else in JACC Asia. Yeah, I think it's possible.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is good.
But I think the beginning is to try to capture more patients and more papers from Asia and get them published in the family.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Gareth, I saw you have so many questions here now, so it's your turn to ask this question.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left if that's going to work. But like people are asking about is it open access, these journals, or what's the publishing model, and what does it cost authors to publish in these journals?
Yeah, so thanks. So open access is interesting, and we could have a whole other talk about open access. So no, it does not cost to publish. There is a fee for others who are downloading papers from Elsevier or from other sites. You can purchase open access if you want your paper to be available to the entire world without a subscription or without paying a fee. And springboarding off from that question, Gareth, is print versus online. Our journals are all online, but many are also in print still. But that may continue in evolution, like JACC Basic and Basic to Translational Science is online only, like case reports. But there are others like JACC Cardiovascular Interventions, heart failure imaging, electrophysiology that are in print also. But that may evolve.
Yeah. Interesting. So the other thing that we're encouraging authors to do in China in particular is to work on ways to make themselves more visible and connectable internationally. So, I mean, are you engaged with ORCID? Do you require researcher IDs for submission, or are you encouraging authors to do that?
Yeah, I do encourage authors to do that. Yes, I submitted a paper to another family journal last week and had to do it via ORCID, but we don't mandate. I think it is a good thing to do that. With regard to getting involved, what I would suggest is, for example, we've got the China Great Wall meeting coming up in weeks ahead, and to online interact. We will have an editor session. The JACC family will be there, and there will be an opportunity to interact. We have the course in Nanjing each year on the left main and the bifurcation summit. There are many meetings that go on in China every year, and I would encourage in China for people to get involved with those local meetings. And oftentimes JACC editors are there, and it's great to interact with people for sure.
Perfect, because people are looking for experience writing and getting with journals for peer review and just learning about the processes, even like the submission systems of.
Yeah. So each year, for example, Xiaoling Chen has invited Jack to come to his course, usually in a November, December timeframe, and we often have a JACC session there where we meet with authors and try to help them with the manuscript submissions, things like that. So I think many of the larger society meetings, the CIT, the Cardiovascular Intervention meeting that Bo Shu and Greg Stone and others help run each year, either out of Shanghai or Beijing, is another great place to meet editors and others involved with the journal too.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll hand back to my colleagues, but I mean, I want to say thank you very much for this presentation. I was great to see this, and I learned a lot personally.
Thanks to you, Gareth, and to Tao and Rui and Ning for putting this all together.
Yes, thank you. We learned a lot from this presentation, and thank you for all discussion answers to our audience. Yeah, they have a lot of good comments. Also today, I don't have very good Wi-Fi at my home, so the Chinese audience sometimes cannot hear very clearly, but yeah, they said it's very good. So, but they can got the recordings later. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I invite you and Ning and others to think about what other topics could be covered for the audiences in Asia, so that we, can go back to some of these questions and help further.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Yeah, see you.
I will end the meeting.
Yeah, you can end the meeting.我在跟小鹅通的，我们还没有。